Good evening again. We're so happy that you join us week after week on YouTube and a growing group of people on Zoom. This is Sharia Crime Stoppers news analysis program, and we are just gifted yet again tonight to have our two guests with us. Leo Hohmann, this is your rotation, and you've invited Shahram. So good evening, Leo Hohmann and Shahram Hadian.
Good evening, Dick. Thanks for that introduction, and thank you, Shahram, for joining us again with this important webinar as we get closer and closer now to the real deal as we head into the end of August and the beginning of September, which everyone says that's really when the U.S. presidential election really begins in earnest. This promises to be an election year like none other. We now have, since we last met with you guys, both parties canceling their in-person conventions. The Democrats in Milwaukee and the Republicans in North Carolina, both President Bush and Joe Biden say they will not even be present at these conventions. It seems to me, Shahram, let me know your thoughts on this, but it seems to me that almost nothing could be a surprise when it comes to the election year as we get it heating up into the fall, approaching November 3rd. Are you expecting, for instance, let's start with the debates. Do you think that we'll see any debates between President Trump and sleepy Joe Biden?
Well, the answer to that is no. I don't expect that we're going to see debates. I think that they're going to, as things ramp up and as there's already talk. I was talking to someone last night who is one of our prayer partners in our ministry, and he was sharing with me some videos of folks who are really praying. They're doing a lot of praying right now for our nation and sensing that there's a real perilous time, particularly in the fall. So I think that something else is going to be planned.
You mean an October surprise?
Late September, early October surprise, exactly. And I think maybe even close to Constitution Day, which is September 17th this year, that they could be planning something. There's already been some talk about having a tear down the White House, some sort of a tear down the White House event on Constitution Day, like they want to show up and outside the White House again and have a riot protest. So yeah, I don't expect, Leo, a debate. I'd be shocked if there was actually a debate, because I think Trump, would clean Biden's clock. If Biden can get 4 words out without, having his handlers help him. I'm also disappointed, obviously, that Trump canceled the Republican convention. And like you said, they're not going to be showing up in person. So this all plays into the hands of the left. They politicized this virus and all of the other things that are going on to be able to ultimately affect the election. And one of the things that I can tell you, coming from a state like Washington State that has had voter mail-in voting for many, many years now, is that it is, number one, it's the concept of fraud. And number two, it's the concept of manipulation, because so many illegals, undocumented people, dead people, there are so many on the rolls in Washington who shouldn't be voting or who are dead or again, illegal. Number two, Leo, you have this ballot harvesting that they do where they actually go and they try to manipulate and say, hey, we'll take your ballot for you. Let us help you fill out your ballot. This is just spells manipulation. And I'm not even talking about the level of what Trump is saying or hinting to, which is that it could mean that there's going to be a fraudulent election. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's going to be votes not counted and there's going to be manipulation in these places. Washington State has seen this repeatedly. There is so much effort when we have elections by the Republican Party having to go in and having to do these ballot rehabs because so many people's ballots are not counted by partisan party officials, whether Democrat or Republican, depending on the county you're in these places. So all of that does just not bode well for something we could trust coming up in the fall.
Yeah, I can really see, Shahram, this election being thrown into the courts. If it's even semi-close, the Democrats are going to contest it. And with all these mail-in, universal mail-in ballots, we just have a recipe for a very highly contested result in the election. And that would be a scenario where I think a devastating scenario for our country right now. I don't believe that we could handle, in terms of civil rule of law, civil law and order, I don't feel like we could handle a situation or a scenario where this election gets thrown into the courts for weeks or months. Uh, that could touch off even more violence, street violence, than what we've already seen. It could spread to the suburbs and the outer fringes of the rural areas. And that could be the triggering event that we've all been, we know COVID has been a triggering event, but if this beast system, this great reset they're talking about, if they really want to roll that out, I feel like they need one more triggering event. What
Right.
about you?
I no, I 100% agree. And again, those who have are communicating to me where they're really in prayer, as I said, and they're really trying to discern, because I think we'd all agree we need such divine wisdom in these next 2 or 3 months in this nation, both within the political, but also the spiritual within our churches. Of course, our churches most of our churches are out to lunch and nowhere to be found. But I agree with you that what I'm sensing and what others are telling me is that they believe that something significant is going to happen in late September, that is then going to have this cascade effect. Because again, I think that the COVID pandemic hoax is wearing thin on
Yes.
people's nerves. I think all of the the forced mask, and then let's do the goggles like Fauci's saying, and then let's put the PPE on, and let's wait till the vaccine, until we have this new normal. All of this stuff, Leo, I think is wearing thin. So they need a secondary event, whether it's another virus or whether it's something else. And the sad thing about this whole thing, and I anticipate that I think there's so many closet Trump supporters right now that are just not coming out like in 2016. I think there's so many, and I actually think I'm starting to kind of sense. I was almost last couple of weeks more feeling down about the election, but seeing what's going on with the Democrats, and of course we're about to get the nomination for the vice president. The list of the women that he's put out there. We know it's going to be a woman, and more than likely it's going to be a black woman with Condoleezza Rice, or not Condoleezza Rice, with Susan.
That was actually the next question I was going to throw at you. You upended it.
Yeah.
So Biden is supposed to make the decision this week.
Yeah.
He said it was going to be a black woman, but now he interviews Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. Yeah. And I feel like she was auditioning for the position about a week and a half ago, when she declared racism to be a public health crisis in Michigan. Everyone of the Caucasian race in Michigan, in her eyes, I don't know that she believes this, but like I said, she's auditioning to become the vice president for, as Biden said, the most progressive administration in U.S. history. So she has to come out and try to be as progressive, i.e. communist, as possible in order to give herself a chance and catapult herself above these black women who've already apparently been interviewed for the position. So we've got her, we've got Susan Rice, we've got Kamala Harris as sort of the front runners. I don't know about you, but I'm leaning towards Susan Rice as my best guess. And it's only a guess, who can get inside of the Democrats' minds. But I'm thinking she carries less baggage than some of these others. only because, not because she has less baggage, but only because it's less known. I feel like she's a less known commodity compared to someone like Kamala Harris or Whitmer. She is a slick liar, which makes her automatically very qualified for the job, because this is the person, let's face it, who will be president ultimately if Biden is elected. I don't think he'll make it through his first year before he resigns, or they take him out through an Article 25 proposal, meaning he's mentally incapacitated. So what are your feelings? Who do you think who would you put money on if you had to call it right now?
Well, I'm actually in agreement with you, because I think that Whitmer, while she's posing, I really think that it would not placate to the base, especially with these gaffes that he's had about trying to make the Black community monolithic. He's had these gaffes about, the Hispanic community is diverse, not unlike the Black community, and they got to walk it back because he's making these gaffes. So I think it seems
like every one of his gaffes lately has involved the Black community.
Exactly, because it's showing how truly racist the Democrats are. The Democrats are. They're truly the racist party. It's incredible how people don't see that. It's incredible how Christians don't see this, who are talking about, we're not going to support Trump and vote for a Democrat. So I think that Whitmer is not going to interest anybody. The idea that he would go with Whitmer because Michigan is a pivotal state for the electoral college. In throughout the history of the presidency, it has not worked. Very rarely has that worked to try to, if you remember, Romney went with what's his name, Paul Ryan. Because of Wisconsin, thinking that would pick up Wisconsin, and they still lost it. So I think Kamala Harris is too much of a loose cannon. I think Susan Rice. Here's the other reason why I think it's going to be Susan Rice, and also Kamala Harris didn't excite the base. She ran for president and got what, 2%, 1%, 2%. She didn't excite the base. Susan Rice. The other ones are very volatile. The one from California, who's part of the Black caucus, I think they're too volatile. I think Susan Rice sort of connects them to Obama, number one.
Correct.
So it gets that Obama vote. Number two, Susan Rice knows the secrets.
Right.
This is another reason why I think Susan Rice could be the person, because Susan Rice knows the secrets.
She is your classic insider. Correct.
Insider, exactly. She's been on the inside. She's got a lot to lose if the secrets come out, if the stuff that's going to be exposed. So she is the one that I see being able to keep her mouth shut or continue to lie. As you said, she's just a fantastic liar.
Yes, she stood in an interview face to face with somebody on CNN. I don't remember the interviewer, if you recall, and swore that the Benghazi attack was the result of a Islamophobic video that was put on YouTube. And she knew darn well that had nothing to do with it.
Exactly. And she's repeatedly lied, even about, and most importantly, remember, her biggest lie was about the unmasking, that she lied about the unmasking of Flynn and others that was going on right as Trump was coming into office. So I think of those that at least they've mentioned, unless they have somebody that they're just not mentioning, of those that they've mentioned, I agree with you. I think Susan Rice is the safest choice. It checks the boxes. She's Black, she's a woman, but yet she's not the radical, because they're trying to make Biden seem that he's the progressive. So they want somebody that maybe is more stable. And I think that she comes across as articulate, but more importantly, in my mind, she was the insider. She was in on the meetings when Biden was there with Obama. She knows the secrets, and she has as much to lose as Biden. And so therefore, that's what I'm thinking.
I could not agree with you more. And you even confirmed why I like her, or don't like her, but I don't like her, but why I would choose her. as the candidate. That one word insider, I think, seals the deal. This is the equivalent. Susan Rice, in many ways, is the equivalent of George Herbert Walker Bush's candidacy on the Republican side for president back in, what was that, 1988? 88 or 90?
The first Bush?
The first Bush, George
Yes,
Herbert
yeah.
Wright.
That was
Pappy Bush. He
Yeah.
was an insider. Remember, he'd
Yeah.
been a diplomat like her. He
Yeah.
worked for the CIA. He
Yeah.
was a, expert liar. Susan Rice, and the fact that she will be president,
right.
they really
Right.
would. That's the reason they have to have an insider in there. Sometimes you can
Exactly.
afford, if you're the global elites, these people who pick the candidates, in my opinion,
Yeah.
with the exception of Trump, in my lifetime, outside of Reagan, I believe Reagan slipped in there. I believe that the first Bush was the anointed one that year, but they ended up making him the vice president. So that was a case where an unanointed candidate made it into the Oval Office. And the only other case of that in my lifetime is Trump.
That's right.
And usually these candidates are anointed by the people we don't even see.
Right.
And your average American would probably not even recognize the names if we tick them off.
Right.
But so yeah, I think that's an important point you made.
And Leo, one of the questions that someone's already, one of the comments that someone already made, by the way, thank you for, John, thank you for the siege at the White House. That's what I was talking about,
Yes.
Leo. September 17th on Constitution Day, they're planning the siege at the White House. And I think that, again, what we've seen already, there's going to be another wave of violence, and there's going to be another wave of whether it's a COVID 2.0 or something else that they're planning. And I think that, again, folks, one of the things we've been talking about when Leo and on Sharia Crime Stoppers and on our webinar is, again, we're talking about the preparation. This is why we're talking about both the political preparation within the current system, but both the outside preparation, because you got to be ready for the uptick of violence, the uptick of persecution, all these things. The comment about, if this gets thrown into the courts, my point was going to be with that. I think that we could be surprised by a bigger landslide, where I was a little bit weary a couple of weeks ago about Trump's reelection chances. I think we could be surprised. The more that they hide Biden and the more they don't have anything to run on with these gaffes and whatever, I think we could be surprised by maybe a pretty big landslide election, which then I think the Democrats would actually throw it into court, trying to use that to stop Trump from taking office. So, we already know they've tried everything and the kitchen sink to throw it at him. And this is why, folks, our prayers matter, because if we believe that God allowed Trump to come into office as a reprieve to this nation, and also to expose, I think our prayer has to continue to be that God help us to turn back to you and help us to expose what is going on in this nation. The only chance we have of being able to slow things down is to expose. And that's why I think Trump is such a threat.
Yeah, Kathy has an interesting question here, or comment. She says Susan Rice will be entangled in the Durham investigation, if not directly, then tangentially. I don't see her as the VP pick. Kathy, I don't see the Durham investigation coming out with its report. Do you? I don't see it coming out before the election.
Before the election.
And I think if it comes out at all, it's going to be if Trump wins a second term.
Right.
Why they're delaying it, I don't know. Obviously, there's some kind of factors involved, maybe fear. I don't know. But if Joe Biden wins, I don't think Susan Rice will have to worry about that Durham investigation.
Well, the first thing Biden's going to do, or whoever's handling Biden, is he's going to get rid of all the U.S. attorneys, right? Remember that's what the president can do. So he's going to go in and be able to clean house and get rid of all the U.S. attorneys, which in essence shuts down, just like Obama did when Holder was head of the DOJ, right? They shut down all the investigations into the Muslim Brotherhood, into Obama's past. So I agree with you. I think that those who are saying Durham could take action, I don't know, folks. I agree with Leo. I think that that only if Trump wins, I don't see them unleashing this before the election.
Right.
So that's why. But anyway,
They could surprise me, but
they could.
I have not seen the courage on the part of Bill Barr, that I would like to see. And I feel like if he was going to release that before the election, he would have already done it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So somebody brought a good point about Michelle Obama as VP.
Yeah.
Look, we've speculated about this for a long time. So that's why we said, unless they're hiding something,
Right.
where they're going to pull a rabbit
Right.
out of the hat. So you look, if they pick Michelle Obama, we've speculated of Obama keeping his hands in the power base and staying in DC. So that would be a very interesting scenario, because again, I 100% agree with Leo. I don't see Biden getting through a first term. Look, let's pray that that's not the case.
Yeah.
But regardless of what happens, I think you're going to see the nation burning. If Trump gets reelected, we've said this, that they're going to, whatever violence we have seen, multiply by 10, by 20. And we got to get ready for those scenarios, folks, so that we're not taken aback by what will happen. So.
Absolutely. And talking about, you mentioned well, before I move on to my article on Ilhan Omar, I would like to get your take on one other thing, election related, a couple other things, Shahram. One was the president's very cryptic comment last week that, you may not see me for a while. I have these powerful enemies, very, very powerful, very, very wealthy people, he said, who are very mad at him, very upset with him, and you may not see me for a while. Was that just him trolling these people, letting him know that he's on to them, or what could that be about, do you think, Shahram?
Well, that's a great question. And it was very cryptic, especially when he's in front of, what was it, a Whirlpool, or, he was talking to people at a factory.
In Ohio, right.
In Ohio. So it was very cryptic. I think that it could be trolling, in the sense of that. And also, I don't know if you noticed today, the interesting development as far as, and I don't know if there was anything behind it. I just saw it as we were about to come on, but he was pulled out of the press conference by the Secret Service today. So
yes,
look,
just about an hour before we got online here. Yeah.
So I think you're going to see, I don't think we know all of the threats against him that are happening behind the scenes. And also, you got to put yourself in his shoes. When you understand that you're that surrounded by the deep state, and when your article about the Civil War is started, and how is Trump ready for it? I think he sees it. I think, again, when he alluded to it at Mount Rushmore about this Marxist revolution, I think he sees it. But my question is, if you were in his shoes, who do you trust around you?
Right.
Who do you trust to know, even the Secret Service, to protect are they going to protect his life? Are they going to, this cryptic
Shahram, I feel like you're reading my mind. I just mentioned that to someone today, that, with all of the traitors that he's had in his cabinet, all of these people he's had to replace, we found out they were working against him behind his back.
Right.
How are we to know he couldn't have a traitor in the Secret Service?
Exactly. So this cryptic comment about this may be the last time that you're going to see me for a while, is it that he's concerned about that he's going to be betrayed for his security? And now we're talking about potentially an assassination, something happening before the election. Could that be a major event that they're planning? We just don't know. This is the problem. We don't know. And I guess what it's hard for people to really fathom is how deeply evil the system and the deep state and these globalists are. These are dangerously evil people who will not hesitate to take anybody out, including us. So
Right, and
only-
our
only-
friend Phil Haney, right.
and our friend Phil Haney, and only by the grace of God can we stand and do what we're doing. So I think we got to pray for the president. We got to pray for this election. We had a lot of prayer people are telling me that they feel God's putting on their hearts that the month of September has to be a month of our repentance. You know, in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew calendar, the month of September in the Jewish calendar is the month of Elul, and leading up to what they called the Feast of Atonement, the entire month was a month of repentance and seeking God for God's wisdom for the coming year. And early October, interestingly enough, is the beginning of the Jewish calendar year. And in Bible history, a lot happens during this time of year. And so a lot of people are telling me, putting on my heart. In fact, there's a big event that is being planned for Washington, D.C., September 26th, called The Return, which is, in fact, Franklin Graham was just on this week calling Christian leaders to come to Washington, D.C., Christians come to Washington, D.C. for this big event. Now, what we're going to try to do, Leo, is do something here in Tennessee at the state capitol. I'm working on something right now. I just talked to a state senator today trying to organize an event there with the same heart behind it, that the only thing we can do is go before God with a heart of repentance.
Yes.
And a heart of declaring, God, we want to return back to you in this nation. Forgive us that we have forsaken you. Forgive us that we have abandoned you. Forgive us that we have abandoned our foundation, our Judeo-Christian foundation. And so it's a big month. I think the enemy has a lot planned. I think these deep state actors have a lot planned. And I think God has a lot planned if his people will cooperate with him. But I mean, we can speculate about all this, but there's no doubt in my mind that if Trump is speaking these things out, that there are things going behind the scenes. And so whether he's exposing them, he's telling them, you know, it's the message, it's a shot across the bow of, hey, I know what you're planning, or whether there's actual, I would not doubt if there's credible threats, and if there's even credible risk of sabotage from within. I mean, you know, isn't that what the red-green axis is all about anyway? Sabotage from within.
Right.
You know.
Speaking of which, sabotage from within and from without, it seems like we've got enemies, foreign and domestic, right now to be worried about. And tying this back in with the election, which we have coming up, China is deeply involved, are they not, in trying to create some of this chaos, fund some of this chaos, this disorder is the word that keeps coming into my mind when I lay down at night. Everything that used to be in order is now in disorder. And we've got these communist governors out on the West Coast, California, Oregon, and Washington State. You, having recently moved out of Washington State and having actually run for governor of that state, what can you tell us about what's going on out there in terms of the governors of those three states seemingly cooperating with China?
Well, China has, I don't know of how many people know, and in fact, it even skips into Idaho, Leo. So China has physical property. The Chinese, the CCP, the Chinese government owns physical land in these states, including even in the area around Boise. They have massive cooperation that they receive from these governors. There's economic trade that these governors have with China, with the Communist Party of China. So when you look at the industries that are in Washington State, i.e. Boeing and Microsoft, when you look at Google and Facebook, these technocracies, these tech giants that are censoring us left and right, Leo, as we have said on the show, I believe that they're going to try to keep things shut down, obviously because of COVID, and if there's another supposed wave. I believe that they are planning the economic civil war side of things because they have joined into a compact. And I don't know if most people appreciate the concept that the compact, that the idea of regional governance is the idea of global governance. So when you hear regional governance, folks, it's global governance. Now, it could be on a small scale. It could be like the European Union, that of course is now, right now, it's a failure, right? The European Union has been an utter failure, which is why Brexit and Hungary and Poland and the Czech Republic and even Italy to some extent are talking about national sovereignty and independence again. So, but the compact that they signed, so the governor of Idaho, governor of Oregon, Washington, and California, along with Colorado, and I believe it was Nevada, have signed a compact, but it started by the three leftist coast governors, that we're going to cooperate with each other in economic trade, regional trade, and also if they had their way, they would want to secede. Well, we know that that's not going to happen because there has to be an act of Congress for them to secede from the union. But they can shut down so much of, again, just think about how much Microsoft, Google, Boeing, Facebook, YouTube, Silicon Valley, how much they control things in this nation. So, and the other troubling thing, and I mentioned this to you guys right before we went on air, is that even though Trump has issued an executive order against TikTok and the parent company ByteDance, now Microsoft is talking about buying TikTok.
Yeah, and is that any improvement over the Chinese government?
That is no improvement. That does not make me feel any better.
That's what I was thinking.
The sabotage and the fact that this is an information operational, propaganda operation by the Chinese, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, because we know TikTok is sending information back. There's even some speculation about Zoom. Here we are on Zoom.
Sure.
So you're exactly right. The threat to this republic right now, as an enemy nation, is China. China is the number one threat to this republic from an outside national standpoint, along with the fact that obviously Russia is a part of that. But the Chinese infiltration and the cooperation of these governors is very concerning and undermining. And the reason I brought up the property is because when China owns property, think about this scenario. What if, and people have said it, right? What if we're going to see UN and Chinese troops on American soil? If they see that things are weak. Well, hello, how about coastline? Can you imagine those three states declaring economic civil war against Trump if he gets reelected? Can you imagine allowing Chinese troops who already have property, legal property, they own land in those states, to come into those states and set up shop and set up headquarters and maybe even bring troops across, through airports on, because again, if those states shut down, are there not military bases on those states? There are. Yes. Are there not nuclear submarines, nuclear bases, obviously naval bases? So again, imagine, folks, what can happen if these states with a regional compact, which is, by the way, wholly unconstitutional, completely unconstitutional, a violation of the sovereignty of states. If they do this, it's on. It's on. Yes. The nation is going to break up, and it's on. And Trump is now a wounded president, governing literally a splintered nation, which is why we need to fight for certain states to push back and become hopefully places of constitutional sanctuary.
And I am getting reports from some sources that the Chinese military has been doing war games, practicing beach landings.
Exactly right. There's cooperation, Leo, going on between these states and the Chinese military. And again, when we know anybody that that's worth a lick of salt has said there's no doubt that China is getting information. There's cooperation from Google. There's cooperation from Facebook. Cooperation from Microsoft. So do we think these companies are pro-US? Do we think these companies are pro our constitutional republic and pro our president? Heck no. So
Microsoft, Google, and even Facebook,
Amazon,
these companies have values more in tune with China than
That's
with
right.
the U.S. Constitution.
And the globalists, these are globalist entities. So yes, I mean, think about it. If Amazon overnight shut down, they're based out of Seattle, right? That's their main headquarters. Overnight they shut down. Overnight Boeing shuts down and says, we're not going to fly. We're grounding all of our Boeing planes. I mean, I know this could seem far-fetched, folks, but this is the level of what they will go through to destroy this nation. So we got to gear up and prepare. This is not just about to try to scare people, but it's to say, look, this is the potential of what we're facing, which is why we need to both pray and act in the coming few months.
And if COVID has taught us anything, Shahram, it's that we have to think out of the box. We cannot suffer from this normalcy bias, because who would have thought that we would have seen anything remotely similar to what we've seen the governments do, the state and local governments alone. Forget about Trump and the feds for a minute, but just think of all the things that the state and localities have done in the reaction to this virus that has a 99.7% survival rate. If I would have told you that they would have closed businesses, small businesses, closed churches, told you that you have to be part of an essential business, that tell you what you have to wear in public, all because of a virus, you would have said I was crazy if I said this 7-8 months ago. And so I don't think anything is far-fetched at this point, as long as it's coming from our due diligence and our research. And sure, some of it is speculative, but I think it has a good factual background, and it is plausible. That doesn't mean it will happen, but like you said, we have to prepare for it.
Well, and Leo, part of the problem is, again, most of everything we just said is actually reality. The ownership of land, the ownership, the cooperation of those Western states with the Chinese Communist government, economic trade between those states and China, the fact that there's major industries, particularly the technology industry that is on the West Coast. So all these things are reality. The fact that these governors have signed the compact with each other in violation of state sovereignty. So, and the fact that those three states are some of the worst impacted states in regards to the shutdowns and the destruction of business and rights. So these things, folks, are actually happening. Now, what the scenario, I think, is, and our mutual friend Brandon House has talked about this several times on his programs, that the scenario is that China is obviously trying to weaken the United States and cause the division, as you said, Leo, and then pounce on it through both through espionage, the cyber espionage, the hacking and stealing of intellectual property, and those things they've been doing for a long time. But again, I do not think it's far-fetched that you would see Chinese troops on West Coast land in the coming future if Trump gets reelected, and if these states are, and like you said, nobody would have believed this scenario 8 months ago, 10 months ago. If last fall you and I had done this webinar and said, here's all the things they're going to do to us, we would have said, this is 1984. This is a Hollywood movie.
Right.
And people would have said, hey, this is America, not in America, right? And yet, folks, we've allowed ourselves to easily be shut down and taken over.
Absolutely.
And literally censored with these masks.
And
with
every time someone goes out of their house with a mask on, they are sending the message to these control freaks that they are willing to play by their game. I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to take a hard line on this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know the stores all have their little signs up saying masks required, no mask, no service, whatever. You have to push the envelope. Do not take that sign as the be all and the end all that you absolutely cannot enter that store. I talk to people I know every store is different. Every company is different, but I talk to people every day, even here in Michigan, where I'm visiting right now, that, you know, they see the sign on the store door, they go in without the mask, they may or may not be approached. If they are approached, they tell the person that, you know, I understand your policy, but I'm not going to wear a mask. Some people say they have a health condition. Other people just say it's against my civil liberties. You know, if you want to order me out of the store and deny me, a customer, your service and my money given to you for your product, then I will leave. But very few are being kicked out, very few. So we don't have to be so easily bullied into compliance, folks. Right. Test it, push it, reject it, because something worse is coming down the pike. That is why they're making such a big push for these masks, because it's a perfect test. It's a perfect thing to launch a test run on. If people will bow to the masks, they figure we'll bow to the vaccine, or who knows what else the next thing is. There may be something else we don't even know about yet.
Leo, just yesterday, or on Saturday, Fox News was running a big poll, and the anchor, maybe it was Sunday, it was yesterday. The anchor, I can't remember which anchor it was, or Sunday anchor. He was like, you know, because the poll was 65% of Americans are going to take the vaccine, 35% are not. And he was saying, you know, oh, I hope we can get this vaccine soon. I hope we can, you know, so even Fox News,
even Fox is pushing it hard,
pushing it hard. And the next thing, and I agree with you, Leo, we have tested this. When we went into Walmart, I told my wife, she went into Walmart, you tell them, I'm not putting this on. I have a hard time breathing. You don't even have to say I have a medical condition. I have a hard time breathing with it, which is the truth. And it makes me anxious. It makes me have a hard time. And she went in. Now, you know, I went into Costco the other day. Did I get a couple of dirty looks? People going, you know, kind of looking at you like, well, why do I have to wear it?
Right. That's the beauty of it.
Yes.
You're sending a signal to the other people, and you might embolden them next time.
Exactly.
To walk in without a mask.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But if we don't, I 100% agree with you. If we don't push back, we will never know, because they're going to sit there and tell you this is the law when it isn't. All you have to say is it's not the law. It's actually number one, a recommendation, but number two, it's a mandate from the health department. It's not a law. It was never legislation. So therefore it's not enforceable. Most counties, most sheriffs have said they're not going to arrest people. They're not going to enforce this stuff. The worst that can happen is Walmart or whatever restaurant says, hey, and you know, the good thing is, you know, if that restaurant doesn't, I guarantee you there's 20 others that will gladly take your business, support them. But there is a, you know, I've always said this, there's a litmus test that sometimes is done in society. And that litmus test is like what do they call it? Like a chalk line? What is that when you drop a chalk line? A plumb line.
Plumb line.
That's what I'm trying to think of. And this is a plumb line, folks. The mask mandate, because they had a hard time keeping people at home, right? They couldn't control people when they were at home or they were out and about. But this mask mandate is the plumb line that they're testing society on for, as Leo said, the next thing, which is 99% going to be then the vaccine. And as I've said, Leo, they already have the technology for the vaccine. They already have the scenario set up, and they already have the language.
Yes.
You can't buy or sell without the identification of the vaccine.
That's
And
why
even
this mask is the perfect template for it. Correct.
That's right. And even the country of the Netherlands came out. There's an article just a couple of days ago. The government of Netherlands came out and said they're not going to require their citizens to wear masks because their health departments have told them they are useless. They do not work. So unless you have a particular PPE type of mask, they do not work. So
Absolutely.
it is nothing but false conditioning of society. And folks, again, I want to say publicly, if you feel that you're somehow safer, you wear a mask, go ahead. I'll respect your right to do that. But don't do it just because they're forcing you. And a pastor friend of mine said to me yesterday, Leo, he said, the mask is really a false for Christians. If you're a Christian out there, I want to challenge you for a second. If you're a Bible-believing Christian and your faith and your salvation is in the Lord Jesus Christ, when you know when this life ends, in a blink of an eye, we're with him, then I want to tell you, this mask is a false sense of security, because you got to know only God can ultimately protect you. I can wash my hands 100 times a day. I can, I was listening to the radio the other day. Now they're coming and saying certain hand sanitizers have, is it ethyl, not methylene, methylene? Is that what
methane.
Yeah.
Methane, something like that.
Something like that in it, and
But
it's not
over,
good for you.
over 50 of them have it.
Yeah. So now the hand sanitizers are bad for you. So you're going to get sick from that and not COVID.
After they let you slather yourself in it for 5-6 months, then they tell you it's bad.
Then they tell you, so what's the next thing they're going to tell you? Oh, they're going to come out and say, well, actually, we found out that the masks are not good for you. So my point is that all of this stuff, I'm not saying don't wash your hands. I'm not saying don't, to build your immunity up. Take vitamin C, take vitamin D, zinc, all these things, build your immunity up.
Yes.
Be healthy. But folks, we got to understand that there's a false sense of security. This thing will not protect you. Only God can ultimately protect my life. And he knows my days. And so please, we got to push back now. And I really pray that in the next month, we're going to see a real turning and a real pushback. And we're already seeing it. There was a big rally in Seattle, of all places, Leo, where they had a pro-police rally. 2,000 to 3,000 people showed up in downtown Seattle, many of them not wearing masks. Good for them. And so even in the stronghold of communist Washington state, there are still those who have a heart beating and are fighting for liberty and supporting law and order.
I agree. There are definite signs out there that more and more people are waking up to this COVID craziness, and the fact that the government response to it was way, way, way out of line in terms of the level of the threat. People are realizing that the numbers have been cooked, baked, and put in sideways to make them come out of the oven much worse than they actually are. They we have governors with blood on their hands sending these folks into nursing homes who had COVID, and that accounts for 50% right off the top of these numbers.
Right.
50%
That's
were
right.
elderly, sick people in nursing homes who did not need to die because an infected person was treated in the hospital briefly and then put back into the nursing home so that these immunocompromised, sick, elderly people could then all catch COVID and die. Those are the people who are most at risk. And now there's this big controversy about the children. Have you noticed that the news is just chock full of reports right now about, oh, COVID is a danger to children. COVID can be spread by children. There was actually an article in the Wall Street Journal that said that studies suggest that children can spread the virus, robustly among adults, something to that effect. But then if you actually read the article and get down towards the middle and end of the article, actually refutes what the headline said.
Right. Right.
This is a favorite trick of the mainstream media now. These clickbait headlines that say one thing that scare people, but then they actually refute what the headline says in the body of the article. But you've got to read through the whole article to see the real science. That, oh, it's not, this scientist actually says that's not actually quite right, but you would never know it from the headline. Isn't
Exactly.
that a travesty? That's the state of American journalism, folks.
It is.
That Wall Street Journal used to be a very reputable, good paper, and even they're doing it now.
Well, Leo, this is, again, we have to understand that the majority of journalists in this nation are nothing but the propaganda arm of the deep state, of the globalist system. It is nothing but that, because they got to hype fear. Ironic that people sometimes accuse us of being fear mongering when
Right.
we're actually trying to bring a semblance of peace and order, and tell people don't be afraid of these things. Somebody asked the question, do you think that hydroxychloroquine censorship is because of vaccines would not be necessary? Of course. You have the main doctor that was a part of that rally in DC who got fired from her position, and her website got taken down. Why would she be fired from her position for simply having a rally, a press conference in Washington, DC, talking to to Congress people and letting them know, hey, here is our frontline experience with the Z-Pak, the hydroxychloroquine, the zithromycin and zinc and so forth and so on.
Right.
We have seen tremendous response. And the question was, well, does Gates and Fauci have a part in the strategy? Not only do they have a part in the strategy, we know they have a financial investment.
Correct.
I think you said it last time too. The top two leading candidates for the vaccine are connected to Gates and Fauci. They have stake, folks. They have a financial stake. This is a RICO. This would be a great RICO case for prosecuting someone like Fauci and Gates for actually profiteering off of deaths, because they want people to die so that people would be forced to get the vaccine, which is what, again, we said, I think last time on the program I was with you, Leo, that Gates has done in Africa, which is why he's been kicked out of so many different countries. So this scam, which unfortunately many have bought into, including many churches, is folks, we got to see at this point that this is politically motivated. This is sinister. And yes, there are people getting sick, but we don't even know what they're getting sick of. And Leo, did you see the numbers and why more people are not reporting on the H1N1 numbers? Yesterday, headline news, America breaks 5 million cases. Folks, H1N1 had over 60 million cases in the United States under Obama. Did we shut everything down? Did we go stir crazy? Did we lose our way and destroy our economy? 5 million cases, and H1N1 was that 12 times higher? So we're not even close to those numbers yet. And yet nobody is reporting on this. And I could be off a little bit on the H1N1. I believe it was over 60 million cases.
No, I think you're correct.
When it was all said and done. But 5 million, and it was breaking news on CNN, breaking news on Fox News, breaking news. We've reached a milestone in America.
Right. And all they talk about now is cases. You notice they've completely stopped reporting and talking about the number of deaths.
That's right.
Suddenly that doesn't matter anymore.
That's right.
It's only the number of cases. Once in a while, you'll hear them talk about hospitalizations, but they never talk about deaths.
And Leo, even the hospitalizations, when they're talking about hospitalizations, they're not talking about people who go into the hospital that are there long-term, that are actually admitted. They're including numbers, people who go to the ER because they don't have anywhere else to go, because many of their clinics have been shut down. Like for me, in Washington State, our clinic, the one I used to go to, was shut down. The doctors were furloughed because they weren't allowing them to see the people for anything else. So they're counting people that are going into the ER, even to get tested if they're going into the ER with any kind of symptom, because they have nowhere else to go. That's not a hospitalization. A hospitalization is when you get admitted into the hospital and you're actually there for a prolonged period of time, whether it's a few days or longer. And there are people, there's a gentleman who used to be part of our church in Spokane, who, according to the test, got COVID-19. He's fighting for his life right now. He's doing better, thank God. But he had several comorbidities, including he had a high blood sugar because of diabetes and other things. So and being elderly. But again, as you said, Leo, they've cooked the numbers so badly that now they have to go to the next thing. And now you hit it on the head. What works? It's the kids now. It's the kids. If we open the schools, folks, the kids are going to get it, and they're going to be these super carriers, and they're going to infect all their parents and grandparents, and the kids are going to die. And oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's incredible.
Even though most of the European countries have long sent their kids back to school and they're experiencing little to no problems with that whatsoever. Switching gears just a little bit here, but it's still touching on some of the things we've talked about. We had Kathy talk about the Durham report in the questions. You just talked about Fauci and Gates and how they would seem to be prosecutable for the crimes that they are committing. I had reported an article that was picked up by WorldNet Daily last week about Ilhan Omar, and I just posted it on my own website tonight, about an hour and a half, 2 hours before we came on, about quoting an inside Homeland Security insider who told me that the FBI has decided not to prosecute Ilhan Omar for marrying her brother in a fraudulent marriage, which was to try to an effort to keep him in the United States legally and get him a green card so he could work here. She did that in 2009. She did not divorce her brother until 2017. And now we find out from my source that the federal government is not going to go after her for marriage fraud or immigration fraud. So my question is, seeing what we've seen, watching Durham so hesitant and sitting on all these charges that he potentially has against former Obama people, Fauci being able to do what he's doing with all these conflicts of interest, and these people, Hillary Clinton with her illicit email server, Fast and Furious, where are all the indictments of Democrats? It seems like only Republicans get indicted by the federal government. And this Omar case is just the latest example of that. So I know why it's happening, because the source explained in my story about how Obama completely fundamentally transformed the federal agencies, stocking these agencies with civil servants, not the political appointees. Every president has his political appointees. Like you said, when a new president comes in, most of the U.S. attorneys get changed out. Those are political appointee positions. But what Obama did, according to this source, and it was also, I knew this already, I reported it in my book in 2017, he went into the civil service non-political appointee jobs and changed those out and inserted his people into those positions, people who were politically loyal to him and his policies. And those are the people who are still running the day-to-day affairs of these 18 federal agencies. It is unbelievable how successful he was. It was a brilliant strategy. And that's why his top domestic policy advisor, Cecilia Muñez, former La Raza executive, communist, she worked as Obama's domestic policy advisor. And she said, it's reported on page 74 of my book, that her number one top priority was to institutionalize Obama's policies so that they would be embedded into the DNA of every federal agency and live on long after she and her boss were gone from the White House. And that, my folks, is why we cannot get any Democrats indicted, including Miss Ilhan Omar. that used to be considered a high profile case, that type of case that an FBI agent would die to take on, would love to take on. That would be a feather in his cap. It would look good on his resume. Now it's the kiss of death for your post-government career. If you are seen to be too hard on Democrats and the Democrat agenda, when you leave the government, good luck getting a job. And so I guess my question, Shahram, do you believe we have a two-tiered justice system in America now?
Without doubt, there's a two-tier justice system in America, Leo, and your article obviously spells that out with your source in the Department of Homeland Security. We've known. Again, really, it's not surprising that they're not going to prosecute Ilhan Omar or any Muslim, particularly high-profile Muslim, because again, you reported this on the last webinar, that the source had said that the FBI has been stacked with diversity hires. We see this throughout
Correct.
DHS, we see throughout the Justice Department, the State Department, and Trump has not been able to clean house. Trump has not been able to change these things because of the level of institutionalization that Obama accomplished. So in one sense, they accomplished what they set out to do. This has created, not only is it a two-tier justice system, but it is actually empowering the sabotage. It is fulfilling both the Communist Manifesto and fulfilling the mission statement of the Muslim Brotherhood to sabotage from within. So when they have one of their own, like Ilhan Omar, that has come in, and you see the infiltration within the FBI, you see the FBI is still using CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood to train their agents. As you said, this is political, this is career suicide for any agent. And when you talk to, I had a good friend of mine who was in the FBI who was on the West Coast, and he said there were so many investigations under Obama that when they would run investigations, and he said 95% of our terrorism cases are Muslims. I mean, that was just the reality. They weren't profiling. It was just the reality of the fact that 95% of their domestic terrorist investigations was against Muslims, and not the white supremacists that they want us to believe is the big issue. The white nationalists and the white supremacists, which you pointed out last time, tend to live in their mother's basements, and are not real threats. They may be ideologically wacko, but they're not real threats. So the sedition, really, this is sedition, because you have the criminality. So I would go on a step further and say it's really three tiers, because there's justice for the elite, then justice for the rest of us that really is not justice, and then there is the lawlessness. A third tier is really the lawlessness, which means that there is no prosecution, there is nothing, that they can do whatever they want and nothing is going to happen. Even when you have fraudulent immigration, she not only should be prosecuted, right? She should be kicked out of the country. Right. She should have her citizenship revoked, because it is fraud. If I, as a naturalized citizen, when I swore an oath, I signed a document. That document is binding forever. And at any time, if I break that oath, technically speaking, my citizenship can be revoked. So she should have her citizenship revoked, and she should be kicked out of America. And as Trump said, go back to Somalia. Yeah, go back to where you came from under the corruption that is in Somalia, because maybe that stuff works over there. But you know what? We've become Somalia, haven't we? We've become like some of these third world countries in the corruption that governs, where there is no law, there is no justice. And I think that's the third category that now has become the reality in this nation. And it's just deeply troubling. Again, on a positive note, okay, let's look at it just 1 second from a positive note, Leo. I know people are going to say, well, so what can we do? What can we do? Well, if Trump gets reelected, and it's an if, but if Trump gets reelected, and if we can start pushing back at the local level. Because one of the things that I believe is successful is if you get not a US attorney, which obviously Trump has, and I agree with you, you said earlier, I think the Durham investigation into the whole FISA scandals and all the stuff that are there, Leo, could come to play if Trump gets reelected, and now these things could potentially can come out. And maybe if the Republicans, I even hate to say this because, if they get power, what are they going to do? But if the Republicans could take the House back, yeah, okay, maybe, then maybe that could go somewhere. But I think at the local level, I think if you have a local prosecutor who then convenes a grand jury, now come on, think about this for a second, convenes a grand jury at the local level, at a county level, and then indicts at a local level, indicts and puts criminal charges at a local level. And then we work to push that indictment up the ranks, not from top down, but from bottom up. Because the citizen grand jury, the local grand jury in the history of common law was the most powerful thing, Leo, that the founders believed in. This is why the Seventh Amendment codifies the common law. So this is one of the things that we're trying to restore at the county level for sanctuary counties for liberty, is to say, understand the power of your sheriff, understand the power of your county prosecutor, and the power of a grand jury to bring an indictment that could then be used to bring indictment at a federal. Now you go, well, Shahram, Ilhan Omar is in Minnesota. But she committed federal crimes, not just local crimes, federal crimes. And the citizen grand jury, a local grand jury, can indict on federal crimes, even if it's done by a local prosecutor and not a U.S. attorney. Now they can move up the indictment up to a prosecutor, a state attorney prosecutor, a federal prosecutor. But I believe that there's a chance that it can be done at the local level, and that's the only way I think you're going to see these Democrats indicted, at least indicted. Whether they actually go to jail or not is a different question, but at least we can indict them and bring charges against them and let that charge pending. And by the way, if they enter that jurisdiction ever, they can be arrested for that indictment. So there's just an idea that we're tossing around with what we can do for states' rights and for a grand jury at the local level, at the county level, to be able to bring some semblance of justice back to this nation.
Yes, because it really is inverted right now.
Right.
This two-tiered system, or three-tiered as you described it, it's not only, among the elites where we don't see elitist Democrats, indicted, but we do see top-tier Republicans indicted, like Flynn and whatnot. It goes even beyond that. We see it at the local level. We see criminals being let out of jail, hardened, violent criminals in many cases for COVID. And we see rioters being allowed, police stand down and don't arrest them. And yet we see police in Miami and several other big cities writing tickets to law-abiding people who don't have a mask on.
Exactly.
So this two-tiered system, folks, affects us even at the local level. So that's just another thing to pray about and to think about in terms of what Shahram just described. I want to speak a little bit about the ID 2020 initiative. People think that's a new thing, myself included. If I go back to 7 months ago or 6-7 months ago when I first discovered it, but if you look at the Agenda 2030 document and go to the Sustainable Development Goal 16.9, I'm going to read that for you folks. SDG, Sustainable Development Goal 16.9 reads, quote, by 2030, provide a legal digital identity for all, including free birth registration. That would seem to be part of the overall UN agenda, wouldn't it? To get a legal digital identity for every human being on the planet starting at birth. and it's embedded right there in the UN 2030 document. There you go, ID 2020 initiative in a nutshell. Shahram, do you believe that this could be brought into place through the coming vaccine?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, okay, so let's take a step back into the yesteryears. How many of us, when we were vaccinated as children and told that, take this vaccine, this vaccine, this vaccine, did you not get an immunization card, right? So they gave us an immunization card where you would go to school and they would have to show I was vaccinated for this, 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 and this. So what would be far-fetched with the concept that that would become digital? Because again, the technology is already there. It could be simply from your phone. So it's an app and you have to be able to have your ID on this app and then show it when you register. It could be through, and I think there's three things that are coming, right? You and I talked about this, Leo. One is that it's some sort of a card with a chip on it, just like your credit card that has the chip on it now, or something on your phone. Number two, something that you'd have to wear, some sort of a bracelet, ID, something you'd have to wear. And then number three, ultimately, it gets down to the aspect of nanotechnology, particularly the RFID chip, the concept that then something now is actually physically in you that you can't take out. So when you talked about this, if you actually look at Agenda 2021, they talked about this, and I don't have it in front of me. I apologize because I always want to be prepared. But because you brought it up, they have talked about this since 2001. There's actually language going back to 2001 when they implemented a lot of the Agenda 2021 aspects of what they were looking to do, including population control.
Yes.
Because they talked about migration replacement with all the refugees, and they talked about the fact that, the low birth rate of the 8 Western major countries, and we have to be able to, transfer people. And so they've been talking about population control since then, to my knowledge. And so you're right. Even though we're really coming to understand ID 2020 much better now, and the fact that they're actually calling it the mark, that's the other crazy thing. They actually called it the mark, but this is going back.
Who's calling it the mark?
This was, I believe, and I reported on this back in February, that it was in November or in October when they had their event.
Event 201.
Event 201. They talked about the digital mark. That's what they called it. Was the ID 2020 was the digital mark, and it was reported on a few different websites. People can look it up, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But I remember actually reporting on that back in one of my web live stream going back to February. So this, even the language, as I said, they're preparing the way, maybe ultimately for the mark of the beast. But this is without doubt, I think that it's what's coming. I think that there's already the language is there, the push is already there, and of course they have to have some sort of digital verification where you have to be able to show very quickly. So again, just think about this. You want to go into a restaurant and now a big chain, or you want to go on a plane.
Correct.
Now it's the mask. Alaska. Did you guys see that? By the way, can I quickly comment on this? Speaking of Seattle and Washington State, where Alaska is hubbed, it's their headquarters. Alaska Airlines.
You're talking about Alaska Airlines.
Alaska Airlines came out this week and said that if you refuse to wear a mask on their plane, and you create any kind of scene or refuse, then they will issue you a yellow card. And the yellow card will then be the indicator. It will go on your file, and it will be the indicator that they will not allow you to fly until that card is removed, where you've shown compliance or whatever. So I thought it was interesting. My wife was actually the one who made the connection to, doesn't this sound a lot like the yellow star?
Yes.
That Jews had to take.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
And so now, why yellow, right? Why yellow of all things? And so they're issuing a yellow card if you don't go along with the program. And so think about it. You're going on the plane, right? How many people have their boarding pass now on their phone, right? So
yes.
Would it be too hard to have the app where you got to have your digital ID showing you're vaccinated, and you just scan it as you go in, and you can get on the plane. You don't have it? Sorry, sir. Sorry, ma'am. You're not flying today. And now we get into the realm of China with their whole social credit score, where people
Yes.
who don't meet the criteria of a good citizen within the communist regime cannot travel. They are prohibited from traveling, folks. And this is where America is heading. If we,
This is the system they have designed for us. Correct. It's
That's right.
modeled after the Chinese system.
That's
If you
right.
want to know where the globalists want to take us, just study the Chinese system, the Chinese society.
That's right.
Social scoring is the goal.
That's right.
You're absolutely 100% correct. It's gotten way more strict even there in China over the last 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
because I guess the advances in technology, they're able to do this now.
They're able to do that.
This is a technocracy, folks. They call it communism, and it obviously has many of the characteristics of communism, but in many ways, it's even more sinister than traditional communism because they have these big tech giants on their side, helping them create and design this grid, this super information grid that will be able to, snoop on your every move, your every thought. You see how they're censoring us now on all of the platforms. That what they're trying to do, folks, it's not hard to figure out. When you read Agenda 2030, and I agree there's a lot of dry reading in there, but you have to read it knowing you almost have to know where they're taking us to be able to understand it. When they say that it's our goal to leave no person behind, and then they start corralling us into all of their groupthink. You must believe us when we say you must wear a mask. You must believe us when we say stand on the dotted line and not too close to the one on the dotted line behind you. You are not able to open your small business unless you do this. If you provide abortions, it's okay. If you provide haircuts, it's not. But Walmart, they're fine. Target, they're good to go. Amazon, of course, is always good to go. They're making record profits. What they're doing is they're destroying the capitalist system, the free enterprise system, which the last vestige of that system in America, let's face it, folks, is the small business. That's why they're being targeted. You don't see small businesses in China like we have here. You just don't see it because they don't have the social scoring and they don't have the capital. They don't have the governmental suave in order to slide into these money-making positions, because in that type of system, the government picks the winners and the losers. Okay? And that's what Agenda 2030 and Agenda 21 is really all about. And they lay little hints in there, and to me, the biggest one was no person will be left behind. That means you don't get a choice. If you don't go along with this program that we've designed for you, you won't be able to go into a store and shop for your groceries. You won't be able to board the airliner. You won't be able to buy or sell, folks. And it's coming. So it's all out there. They've been real bold since COVID. The global elites have come right out there and pretty much told us what it is they're trying to do. It's all over the World Economic Forum's website. If you want to find out what their plans are, go to the World Economic Forum website. They have a very detailed mapping system where they map it all out, and it literally touches every industry and every facet of human life. And you can see how it's all about greater control. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he has called the Davos meeting they meet in Davos every year, and it's going to be in January 2021. And atop the agenda for that meeting is to discuss what he and the World Economic Forum calls the Great Reset. The Great Reset. that, folks, is the launching of the beast system.
That's right.
It is going to be very coercive and very nasty.
Yeah.
So let's
Wow.
prepare.
You know, Leo, it's so amazing that you said the beast system and you see this, because I wish that more Christians would see this, what we're trying to describe as the setting up of the beast system, and us not going along with it. We know one of the other things that you have to prepare for, folks, is, well, two things that, again, when we talked about, Leo, this secure patriot network that I believe must be established.
Yes.
One is because because of the reset, they're moving towards a cashless society. And
That's
two,
another big bullet point that they want to check off their list, is the cashless society, along with the global ID system,
That's
the
right.
ID 2020. The next is the cashless. You're
cashless
correct.
society, which includes the fact that they're now saying we have a coin shortage. So there's been some talk that the coin shortage will go from coins to then the dollar and the
Yes.
$5. So small currency is going to be then abandoned. So the question is, what are you going to do? So one, we should have some cash in hand. But again, we've said, if you're able to take some of that cash and have some things that are for bartering, that either you have some silver, as I've joked, right? The two great metals, silver and lead. So you have the silver that you can barter with, because you have small amounts. One ounce is somewhere between $18 and $20. So I can use that for small things. Number two, things like that are barterable, like lead, like ammo, like and again. We're actually having a conference that's coming up in Virginia, September 12th, to talk about building this secure patriot network. And one of the things we talk about is your food supply chain, because when you have, so one, communications, two, travel, three, food supply, because when you have this society set up like in China, folks, does your credit right now, does your credit not follow you anywhere? You can't buy a car. You can't buy a house. You can't rent an apartment. You can't get a credit card. You can't get a bank account in most cases without them checking your credit. So as your credit follows you around, the social credit is simply the fact that they're going to assign you a value based upon your cooperation of how much a rebel, how much of a troublemaker you are. So this is why we talk about preparing now for what is coming down the pike, including the persecution of Christians that is going to exponentially increase, because the beast system that Leo just mentioned is ultimately an anti-God system. It is an anti-Christ system that vehemently hates God's people, vehemently hates any semblance of freedom and liberty. And I think that's why it's so important that we organize locally. You connect with other like-minded people and start having these conversations. I talked to a guy recently who was a farmer, and he said, well, we produce extra stuff, and I've been wanting to sell and get this out. So we connected him with some folks, and they're talking about now creating that network that they can then food supply, be able to, when people have, let's say they're a farmer and they have grain. We actually had something like this set up in the Inland Northwest, where twice a year we would have basically a grain feed, where we knew somebody locally who had tremendous amount of grain that they were producing, and we would all show up and we would just buy some extra grain, because we store some grain at home, and it's great for if you have a good my wife, I'm not trying to promote products here, but a Vitamix, one of those really powerful blenders, or you can buy a machine. That stuff can take grain and make it into dough, and you have bread, and you can make bread for your family.
What about, Shahram, if God forbid the power grid goes down? That adds a whole new element, doesn't it?
It does. And we know that China and Iran are targeting our power grid. So again, having the ability at home to be able to be without power, maybe looking at some solar options. These are all things. Again, this is not to say all of us should become hardcore preppers, but at least think about it and at least plan that some of this stuff could very well happen. And look, how about persecution? What do we know right now that's happening? In California, the governor and the local officials are threatening to cut off power and water to businesses that refuse to comply.
There you go.
And to churches.
It goes back
And
to the
to
social
churches.
scoring.
Exactly.
You might not even get power or water, folks, if you
That's
don't
right.
have a social score that reaches a certain level.
That's right. That's right. Because they refuse to go along. They're defying the tyrants. And so therefore there's a cost. So we have to be able to be sustainable apart from those things. If they shut off my power, can I have support from others to help me keep going with my business? Can I live? Can I survive? Do I have at least three? I mean, goodness sake, even FEMA says you should have 3 to 6 months of food on hand as some extra food supply. So again, I know not everybody has the means, but do what you can for some of these things that they are planning to try to do. And they're, look, all of this stuff is going to create an underground system. Whether you like it or not, it is going to create an underground system. Better if we have a secure underground system that we already are working on now, so that it does not take us by surprise when some of these things will happen. Because I guarantee you, when the beast system comes, it will, whatever control we've seen, Leo, from COVID,
Mhm.
take that and multiply it by another 10 times, 100 times. It will be
Right.
total control.
I believe the beast system is already here.
Yes.
It just has not been ratcheted up to where they want to take it
Implemented
yet.
fully.
Right.
Exactly. Because they're conditioning, right? It's the conditioning, like the masks that we talk about. It's a level of conditioning. So the preparation for folks who are listening right now and who go, listen, you guys are not crazy, because there may be people listening and go, well, I just think you guys are crazy. Okay.
Yeah,
I
there
respect
are people out there who suffer from what I call the normalcy bias.
bias, right?
The
Because hey,
normalcy bias. Look that
okay.
up, folks.
It's okay. For the last 7 years, I've been saying the Christian churches in America need to get ready for persecution. They're going to shut us down. And so many people said, this is not going to happen here, Shahram. This is not the same. And look what's happened in a matter of months. So, and unfortunately, many churches shut down voluntarily. So,
Right.
folks, if you think we're crazy, ignore it. But if you think we're not crazy, then I encourage you, you got to pray that God would bring other people into your path that are like-minded. So you can sit down and have conversations and organize and get ready. We talked about some concepts like the committees. We've talked about, again, house churches. We've talked about, and right now, even in Tennessee right now, Leo, because school here in Tennessee opens up early, like the second week of August. I'm not used to this early August school here in the South, but already kids are being ostracized. There was a story that came from a pastor friend of mine just yesterday that a kid, this morning, today's Monday, this morning, that a kid was denied access on the bus because he refused to wear a mask and the bus driver refused to pick the kid up. So I think this is making the case that we need to prepare better for homeschooling, for private schools, Christian schools, because I think that the government, we can't say public, but really it's government indoctrination camps that are schools. I think they're going to collapse. I'm predicting that they're going to collapse by the end of 2021. By the next summer, I think.
You're talking like financially collapse?
Well, financially for sure. Therefore, the system will collapse because so many parents are going to either go virtual or do virtual homeschooling or actual literal homeschooling. And so because they can only live in this limbo for so long,
right?
My kids can't go back to school and they're going 1 day a week and maybe 2 days a week, or based on the alphabet. And what, I mean, this is just insanity. So some people might not agree with me, but I'm actually praying for that collapse. I think it's one of the best things that could happen, because you take away a major tool of the indoctrination which is these government-run schools
Right.
that are indoctrinated. And the next thing that should happen is we should pray for the collapse of the public universities that they're funding with
How about
collapse.
this? How about the collapse of the 6 major corporate media companies? Let's
There
pray
you
for
go.
that.
There you go.
Because like you said, education is now indoctrination and news is now propaganda.
That's right. There you go. So the best thing that could happen, actually, if we're going to survive, is the collapse of these entities. So when I see all the school, yes, it's insane. Folks, it's sad. I know some of you out there, you go, well, my kids aren't going back to school and I got to work and I got to make a living. I get it. But in one sense, the best thing that could happen is if these indoctrination camps financially, because look, these state legislatures can only suck so much money out of you and I to justify more and more money going towards public education. And in Washington state, close to 60%, I believe, of the state budget is now going through to public education. And so every year they want more and more and more and more because less are enrolling, more are choosing private schools and homeschooling. Listen, best thing that could happen, in my opinion, let it collapse. Let it collapse, and then let us go back to raising and training up our children with the values and the morals they need. If we're gonna take this next generation back, it's the only way it's going to happen. Because these cesspools that are Marxist universities and these schools, elementary schools, whatever, and for the most part, these cesspools are simply continuing to poison our kids. And now, with all the Black Lives Matter and all the white guilt and the white supremacy nonsense that they're feeding, as somebody said, Black Lives Matter is really majority a bunch of guilt-ridden white folks, white young people that are marching. You look at Antifa and Black Lives Matter, the majority are white wannabes who are walking around with white guilt, supposedly. That's who they're recruiting. That's who they're because there was another poll that I saw yesterday, Leo, or Saturday, that the majority of Black Americans that don't want police defunded. They want more police on their streets.
Correct.
Because they understand that anarchy is bad for the Black community because they're the hardest hit when there's anarchy and the gangs run the turf war happens. They're caught in the crossfire like in Chicago, which is a war zone.
Absolutely. And I really think Trump is going to get a much larger percentage of the Black vote this election than he did the first time. But one other thing in the vein of what you were talking about, the collapse of public education, there's another facet to that. The universities, they are canceling one of their most profitable products, which is college football.
Oh, yes.
And think of all the ancillary businesses, both public and private, that make money off of the game itself. You know, this could really be a snowball effect, couldn't it? Could it not?
It could. It could be a massive snowball effect that's going to backfire because, like you said, the amount of money that comes into these universities from alumni who fund these, because particularly, like you said, the college programs, to some extent basketball too, but the college program, that's the biggest chunk of money these universities are getting in. And
football and basketball, correct.
Basketball. For them shutting these programs down, this is going to have a big cascade effect that we haven't even seen yet on the general economy. So I agree with you. This is we have to gear up for what is coming. I don't, even though there are some signs with the jobless rates going down, unemployment rates going down, and I do think that if they, if this was pre-COVID scenario, I'd say, yeah, we can get out of this. But if these governors and these states are going to declare economic civil war, if Trump gets reelected.
In a sense, isn't that what they're doing by closing down universities?
That's what they're doing.
Closing down football season, closing down basketball season.
That's
in a sense, it's exactly what they've already embarked upon.
Yes. That's it, Leo. They have already declared the economic civil war. They have their thugs on the street gearing up for
the Big Ten just today announced they're canceling their football.
They're canceling football season. So this is the part of the economic civil war. So it starts with things that we go, well, that's sports, but then they'll go to the next thing. essential.
It's the cumulative effect.
The cumulative effect, and then you have essential. Think about the impact on the travel, on the airline industries if Boeing shut down. You know, yeah, you have Airbus, but if Boeing shut down and said, you know, we're not supplying parts for planes, you know, think about the absolute devastation of that. You know, again, think about Amazon. If they shut down they put all these mom and pop businesses out of business, thanks to the conglomerate that Amazon is. And imagine if they say, we're not going to ship products to you. How many people are dependent on getting their stuff from Amazon?
Oh,
On top of that, then you know, you can't go into the stores and get supplies. So they're planning cumulative, step after step after step, to do whatever they can to destroy this nation, to bring their agenda apart. And you know, somebody asked a question about the Chinese government again. We already showed, Leo, you're the one who reported on the fact that with, you know, on your story about Stone Mountain, and we saw this with CHOP in Seattle, that it's very likely that the Chinese are part of the entity that are funneling either directly or indirectly through the gangs that they're working with to funnel weapons into the nation.
Yes.
So, you know, folks, I don't think it's going to be far-fetched that you're going to see the economic and political are already underway, but now you're going to see a shutdown of borders. You're going to see governors in those states put National Guard on their borders. We're not going to allow anybody to come in. We're not going to allow any of our people to leave. So one of the things that I said to somebody this week, I said, look, I think there's a window of opportunity. If anybody is out there and thinking about relocating, if that's something that's been on your heart, I think there's a window of opportunity for that relocating, because I think the time is going to come where these states are going to shut it down. And they're going to put literally troops that are under the purview of the governors. And, you know, people say, well, why can't Trump, like in Portland, right? When they attack a federal court building, isn't that the purview of the federal government? Shouldn't DHS be in there? Shouldn't Trump send the National Guard in there in that case? But all they're doing is the you know, this buffoon who's the mayor of Portland and the governor there, all they're doing is fueling the anarchists because they are themselves anarchists. So civil war, again, go back to the headline of tonight's talk, Leo, and your headline. Civil war is already here, folks.
Right. And that kind of answers the question from Chris, where he says, I mean, if we can't pursue them legally, what else is left? Folks, swallow the red pill now, okay? The reason Chris is, I understand exactly where he's coming from, but the reason he feels that frustration is he doesn't maybe see that we're in the Civil War. When you get to the Civil War, you're not really able to take your opponent to court. I mean, you can, but what are the chances that you're going to accomplish much? I feel like the day for that is past. We can still try. I'm not saying that all the Christian and conservative lawyers should, you know, close up shop today. They need to continue to try, but Chris is right. He's looking, he's seeing, you know, if they've taken that away from us, what's left? That's why we've been talking about getting prepared in the way that we're describing, about the essentials of the food, the communication, the travel, your supply lines. If we thought we could still win this thing in the courts, maybe we wouldn't be sounding so, talking about such drastic measures. So we just need to think out of the box. The old ways are not going to win us much in this day. I'm sorry to say. It's come to that point now, folks. We've had our chance to go through the legal system. We've had our chance to take over the education system. We've had our chance to get our people in the government. Either we didn't do a good job, or the people we sent in there betrayed us. The people who we thought would defend us and would look out for our interests didn't do so. And so now, as Trump would say, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Hey, Leo, what about, I mean, just a perfect example with the courts, the question being about the legality, because we know most of the courts are, you know, it's a hit and miss, particularly,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we literally have certain,
We still have a few victories now and
few
then.
victories
That's
now
why
and
I'm
then.
saying we don't need to stop that, but
Right.
just we can't put all our eggs in that
No,
basket.
no. And look at the betrayal of Roberts, a Bush
Right.
appointee.
Right.
Roberts has betrayed us more because Sotomayor and Ruth Bader and
Kagan.
Kagan. I mean, they're voting the way we would expect.
Right.
But Roberts has been the sellout. He's been the
Right.
sellout that is sold out, and whatever they have on him,
Hey,
it's
this
got to
is
be
my
good.
right. This is my analysis of the court right now. You've got Justice Thomas and Justice Alito, who are the two rock solid, never bend constitutionalists.
Right.
You've got Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, who to me are now almost they more little more conservative than liberal, but they're almost like swing votes. They can't be counted on 100%. We've
Right.
seen where both of them have voted with the liberals on more than one occasion. And then you've got the others that you mentioned who are rock solid liberals who will always vote against the Constitution if
Right.
it's in the interest of the Democrat progressive wing of the
Right.
Democrat Party. So that really is become an institution that has been very disappointing in the long term for us. I feel like a lot of people feel like Roe v. Wade should have been overturned by now.
And to the point of, you know, so where if Trump gets reelected, where he can make a difference potentially is the fact that, yes, okay, there's a good chance that he's going to have another Supreme Court
right
with you know, I mean, the fact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is alive
yeah, I know
is you know, it's crazy. Every time you see a headline, she's in the hospital, I keep expecting that, you know, she's not going to make it, but somehow she comes back. So, but so there, you know, there's that place. There is the fact that, you know, he does have the ability to clean up some of the circuit courts with his, you know, with his judicial appointees. So I'm not saying he can't make a difference, and I think Leo is not saying that either. But that cannot be the basket. And just like I said earlier, the reason we're looking at prosecutions at the local level and working it from ground up rather than the other way around, because actually that's our constitutional system. The constitutional system was always based upon the local grand jury. The local grand jury is where you would actually see things done, and then it would go up the ranks. It was never supposed to be the concept of the federal and this idea that, well, the local cannot prosecute on things that are federal and vice versa. So I think that it's very important that we do understand there is some chance to look at holding on to some territory while
Yes.
you know, these states that are there. And as I said earlier, I'm not saying there's not a fight in people in those occupied states like California, Washington, Oregon, New York, and so on and so on. There is a fight. There are those who are standing, and they're not going to leave. And they're going to stand to the end.
Yeah.
So
That
thank
brings us
God.
to a great question here from Jody. She says, should we be considering a move to a safer location prior to the election to ensure our safety if we have that option?
So again, this is where we get into, Leo, the sanctuary states and counties for liberty, because I do think that if it is something that somebody can do, and again, I'm not saying that Tennessee or, you know, Georgia or whatever, nowhere is perfect. Nowhere are we safe from the attacks in the sense of the political challenges that we have. But if you're looking at them shutting things down, then yes, I would say that if you're thinking about relocating, if you're able to relocate in the next few months before the election, or certainly before 2021, then I would say, you know, really seriously take that before the Lord and consider that.
Right.
And we've had a lot of people that are contacting us about the relocating to, for example, Eastern Tennessee, where we are, because we're trying to bring the consolidation of like-minded people. But it could be where that consolidation happens at a county level, where you can then come in and join hands and join forces with some
And
like-minded people.
if you can't relocate, but yet you have the financial means, I don't have the means to do this, but I know some of our listeners probably do. I would consider, finding some acreage somewhere away from, if I live in a suburb, I would consider finding some acreage out in a more rural area and maybe putting a mobile home on it or something, someplace where you can get out of the city, out of the
Yes.
suburbs. Yes.
Yes. And we have a lot of people, like when we were working on the Patriot Network in the Inland Northwest, Leo, we had a lot of people that did that. If they were able to get a very cheap property
Yeah.
that they
1
could
acre,
have,
2 acres, 5
just
acres,
something
whatever.
that
Yeah.
they had, they do that, and they would have some supplies there, and they have an
Right.
RV there. So that's
Right.
one option. And we call that bugging out. Some people
Right.
can bug in and stay in because maybe they
Uh-huh.
have a property that they already have their supplies on, they're growing food, they're doing things like that. But some people can't. So therefore, they have a backup option of bugging out. And that was one of the things that we were actually setting up with secure homes, where it wasn't just I bug out for me, but if I already have other people that I know I love and I care about, whether it's family or church members or just friends, hey, again, this is very secure. You're not advertising it. Hey, I have a place. If you need to get to a place, come here. And
That's another good point, by the way, Shahram. If you are able to do this, even if you're able to do any basic prepping, ammo or whatever, don't get on Facebook and broadcast it. You'd be surprised how many people I see.
Oh my goodness.
It sounds like something I shouldn't even have to say, but I see it all the time.
Oh my
People
goodness.
on Facebook bragging about the guns they have, bragging about the ammunition they have, where they're going to bug out to. It is really unbelievable where, people are just giving Mark Zuckerberg the platform to where they divulge their entire plan to try to stay safe during a dystopian event. Yeah.
Exactly. You're exactly right to that. And even with their personal security, I always tell people, when you're out with your family, just from a level of personal security, as a former police officer, I will tell you this: don't post where you are live. Now, if I'm doing a live stream and I'm somewhere, then yeah, it's a little difficult sometimes when I'm actually doing a live stream and I'm at an event where people or other people are there. But like if I'm out with my family and if I'm taking pictures or whatever, and I want to show, I never post those things while I'm there. Do it after the fact when you're not in that area. And then the second thing is, and this is again more on the kind of the prepping side, but I would recommend, if you're able to get a burner phone, very cheap, you can activate it at any point. Usually they have a card that you have certain minutes, and all you need is to have that phone that is not connected to your name and it's not a smartphone. Because if you're going to bug out, you're not going to take this with you.
Right.
Do not take, I don't care if you've taken, I've deactivated my location thing and they can't find me. Nonsense. They can track you. And even your car. The problem is many of the newer cars, unfortunately, have built-in GPS. But that's getting into a different realm. But just from an idea of civil unrest, you're talking about, look, you see these major urban areas being burned, and it's going to get worse if Trump gets reelected. Just from that perspective, just to get out of Dodge for a few weeks, where you say, well, it's an area that's bad and I just want to get out for a couple of weeks to be able to let things cool down. If you're able to, or if you know others, this is where we got to share. This is where we got to truly love one another. Right. And don't just do it for yourself, but do it for others. And which is, by the way, somebody asked the question, if I could just take 1 minute and give a quick update about our house situation here in Tennessee. I think one of the reasons it's a hard thing. People have emailed me and said, can't you just buy a house? Well, no, because we believe that our house has to be strategic, and we've prayed. And the house so I would ask you to pray, because we're actually about to put an offer on a house that we looked at for about 3.5, 4 weeks now. There were some hiccups with the loan situation, and with there's some construction they were doing that the bank wasn't going to lend on. So we've gotten past that hurdle, we think, and we're about to put an application in, or put an offer in, I should say, with the owner, and hopefully get signed around. And I should find out by the end of this week if they're going to do the loan. So I covered prayers for that, but part of the reason we're looking at this particular property is because it's a defensible property. We are seeing it as very strategic, where if I need to be able to have people come out to stay with me, it's a property that I believe we can easily defend and know who's coming and going. And so this is the kind of way my brain works, because again, I've been in this world in Spokane where we were working on these things. And so we're not just trying, I could go tomorrow probably and just buy a house in a neighborhood and probably get my family settled in, but we wanted it to be strategic and prayerful to what God is calling us to do. That's why it's been such a battle, I think, to get settled in here. So thank you guys for your prayers
on that, brother. Yeah, absolutely. I thank you for sharing that with us. That's another aspect of it, whole nother aspect of it that I'm glad you're thinking about. As a former policeman, I'm sure you probably scoped that out very well.
Very well, very well, very well. And especially just from a basic standpoint, Leo, when I travel, my family's home alone, I got to make sure that, it's somewhere that, they can be hopefully safe. And nothing is perfect, but at least you think through those things ahead of time. So being very strategic. And those who are relocating, we've had conversations with people who are relocating who are actually thinking that way. They're not just coming down to buy any house. They're thinking strategically. Well, I want to maybe get some acreage. I want to have somewhere where I can start growing some food or get some chicken or get some livestock or so again, folks, this is the way. If we want to build a secure Patriot network, these are the kind of things we have to think about and actually plan and connect. So if you know somebody in your circle who is a farmer, you better befriend them right now. you better be talking to them right now and say, hey, how can I advertise you and connect you with others? Because there's your food supply chain. And when we're talking about states, one of the reasons we focus on Tennessee, even though it's a landlocked state, is because we looked at, states like Mississippi or Alabama that are coastal, or maybe Georgia that are coastal, that then we could have a supply line if these West Coast states shut their economies down, which they already are, and do even further. So this is some foreknowledge in one sense of preparing for what could be coming if things break up in America with what's, with what they have planned. This is not our plans. This is their plans if they are successful. And let's pray that it doesn't quite happen that way.
We talked about it earlier in the program. It is all designed. It's all on the blueprints. That doesn't mean it will happen.
That's right.
I believe there's still time, folks, for us to collectively rise up and say, heck no, we will not go there. We will not go with forced vaccines. We will not go with forced masking, let alone vaccines. But we've got to get the gumption, the spiritual gumption, I think, to get our footing and make sure that we stand against this and stand strong. And a lot of it is we're going to have to build each other up in prayer, like you just said. Go ahead.
Could I just, and this is because I know if we have any questions, I think we've actually gone through all our questions.
We've gone through all the questions.
This is incredible. That's the first time. But because we kind of took them as we went tonight, but you did. But again, I'll say there's a lot of people that are feeling very burdened in their heart, folks. The month of September, let the month of September that I think is going to be a critical month of how this goes. And how much
September and
God
November, I think,
that's
are the
right.
2 months.
Let that be a month that we pray like we've never prayed before. If you are a person who prays and fasts, pray and fast and seek God. Let your spiritual life come alive. Make it serious, folks. If you're, I pray at dinner time and I give grace, and if that's your prayer life, then my encouragement is, please, we got to get serious with God. So people have called the month of September to be a month of repentance and a return to the Lord. And so whether you see it in Washington, D.C. or state capitals, we're praying for an event we're doing here at the state capitol. It's going to be called Church at the Capitol. And we're trying to bring pastors and even elected officials to come to bow a knee. To bow a knee to God, not to Black Lives Matter, Antifa, or these things. We're going to bow a knee in prayer to Almighty God and say, Father, forgive us for what we have allowed happen in this nation. And we know the only way we can come back is through you, is for you to intervene and lessen or stop the plans of the enemy and the plans of those who seek our harm, who want to destroy this nation and destroy freedom and liberty, put us under bondage, which is the beast system that Leo mentioned, that eventually will happen. But I believe we can delay it by our obedience. I believe we can delay and have God intervene by our obedience. So that's my admonition tonight.
Last call for questions from people if they want to send any. I saw one that disappeared, but I think it was Jody asked if West Virginia was a good state to set up a secure network. What's your opinion on that, Shahram?
Well, we're actually working with Virginia. Again, I'm going to be back in Virginia. So even in Virginia, we're going to see some signs of secure network. They're very motivated there, particularly in Western Virginia. Now, West Virginia, I think, is also a viable option. Yes, I do think West Virginia is a viable option for that network to be set up. So again, the only way you're going to know is if there's a church, if there are some security groups in your area that are already meeting, connect with them. If there are other like-minded patriots that are preparing, connect with them. And here's three things. We always encourage people, start at the family level, meaning prepare your family. Then at the church level, if you're part of a church family, because we want to take care of our each other, and then your community. You're no good to your community if you can't even take care of your family. So that's kind of the level that we're doing. But I think West Virginia is also primed for some sanctuary counties that can connect. And as I said, I'm going to be in Western Virginia in the Roanoke area, September 12th, doing a conference that's by invitation only. So I guess if you're in the area, email me personally. I need to know who you are. We got to make sure we're vetting people, but we want to encourage people, if you're able to come to that area. And we're going to do an all-day conference on aspects of how we built a Patriot network in the Inland Northwest and how we believe it needs to happen in the South and in the Southeast area of America. And one of the things we've said spiritually is it's time for the South to rise again.
There you go.
This time to be on the right side of the argument. So let the South rise again. Let the Bible Belt buckle. They joke about Tennessee being the buckle of the Bible Belt. It's time to, my pastor friend said, it's time to tighten the belt. So tighten the belt. We got to put some of the flab away and time to get serious, folks.
Right. Get lean and mean.
Get lean and mean. The things are heating up. So we'll go to, I think there's some more questions that came up.
Well, I think they're going to go on forever. You guys are on fire tonight. Everything from YouTube that I watch over on this screen to all of the questions popping in here and or comments. But you guys have been on fire tonight. This has been great. So we're going to just let everybody kind of realize we're at a point where we've got to start to close this out.
Yeah.
You guys have worked very hard to bring us this. So it's time to have a little bit of home time with family now.
Amen.
Thank you. Amen to that.
Shahram, would you give your email address for those people who
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So email us at info at tilproject.com. TIL for truth and love, project.com. And if you want specific information, I'll send you the flyer. Dick, I have a flyer. And so you guys feel if you want to disseminate it for folks you want to know, want to be there, because the Virginia folks are very serious and we're using them as a model to then bring it back to other parts of this region because they're gung-ho, they're serious. They got some pastors on board, they got some militias on board, so they're serious about getting ready. So we're gonna see what the Lord does. But then the other thing is, folks, if you're in the South and you want to see this idea of church at the Capitol, contact me about that too, because we have a few sort of pieces of the puzzle that we think are going to be critical for this month of repentance that I believe has to be September, a critical time that we got to go before the Lord. So thank you for letting me get the email out there. And again, thank you for all of you who are praying for us and my family. We have really appreciated it. We felt it. We need it. so we can get settled in here and get busy. You know, as you can imagine, it's distracting, and I want to be more focused on the work at hand, but I got to get my family settled too. So we're trying to do both.
Mary, can you answer that one question that just popped up about the replay? Will a replay be available?
Yep, I was just about to type it in, but I wanted to throw out something, a comment to Shahram. Whatever you've got in terms of events and stuff, send them to me and I will push them out as much as I can.
Okay.
I can
Okay.
even, put a link to something, I'll put it on our website. I can put it, on Facebook for you. Just, send me whatever you've got and I can make sure people see that.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Mary. I will do that. So I'll send you, if you can send me a quick email, I'll send you the flyer that we
Okay.
have set up for, and Dick, it's going to be in the same location. So we're going to be there. And so, that pastor and that community is very on fire. But I am going to be here also in Middle Tennessee area, working with some churches to begin to, it's almost like you got to be careful how much you feed them, because some can take more than others. And there's a lot here to
Yes.
digest. So we're trying to do it layer by layer in some places, so we don't overwhelm people. And they go, I don't want to do anything. I just want to go hide, which is what we can't do.
By the way, just a comment, I think, just to repeat, I think there may be information about the event, et cetera, but you're going to want to send an email to Shahram. It's very important that the security on these early events is very, very tight. So be aware that you're going to go through Shahram to really get all the
Can
details.
Shahram give that email address one more time?
So it's info, INFO, at TILproject.com. TIL for Truth in Love Project.com. And be patient, folks, with I'll get back to you, because we've got a lot of emails coming in, because we actually have almost every day I'm getting emailed by somebody who's relocating or praying about relocating.
Yeah.
Just this
That's
weekend,
great.
We
That's
met
great.
with two couples that, or two families that are praying about relocating here to Eastern Tennessee from Washington State. So it's happening. The consolidation, one of them said, hey, we heard you online. We heard the call. And so we're coming to check things out. So we're doing that. So we're a little bombarded, but I will get, but I'm going to ask some questions when I email, because I want to make sure you're a real person who is emailing me. So let us know, hey, we watched the webinar. Maybe tell me a couple of things that we said tonight on the webinar, so I can validate you were watching. Dick, if you have any ideas on that too, because we want, like you said, we want to make sure that we're being very secure with when we're meeting, for that.
By the way, just a comment here. I think it's important people recognize you were a policeman.
Yes.
And I think that's a really critical point right now. This is very, very carefully done. It has to be. I think we have a rare opportunity to have a professional investigative journalist, Leo, working with Shahram with his background, obviously, in all of these things. So we're really, really very, very special. Mary, we had a high water mark tonight. We've never had that many questions processed dynamically. The numbers are through the roof. And again, that tells me that people are incrementally informed. They are asking detailed questions, showing that they really get what's going on.
Yes.
I need to just take a minute here and move on with what's coming, because I want people to know that these people that you've invested and you trust these people to bring you the news and to bring you the news analysis. So keep in mind that we have a commitment right on through the election by our 3 rotating news analysts. Let's focus on Leo. Leo will be back again 4 more times before the election. He'll be back in 3 weeks. Can you imagine what will be discussed in 3 weeks on the 31st, after the Democrat and the Republican conventions kind of sort of happen? And again, we're very, very grateful to Claire Lopez, who is tremendously in demand, as is Leo and Christine, to be with us 4 more times to the election. And again, Christine Douglas Williams, who will be here next week and will be with us through the election 4 more times. These are people that are just really building their heart and soul and their mental capacity to give you, really, you're hearing it tonight. You're talking about life and death issues for your family. So thank you for that. And then one more, we have another critical 3 more webinars with Dr. Mark Christian before the election. This will be on the Thursdays, the 4 Thursdays of August, September, and October. So with that, let me just remind you all to please, I guess my comment on these upcoming news analysis, Shahram talked about preparing your family first and your community. One way you can do that is to tell people what you heard tonight and to promote the recording and to tell people what's coming up. These three people with Shahram as available through Leo, thank you so much for that combination. These Monday nights are going to be increasingly valuable for you and your own personal safety, not just your ability to live in a free country. So, Mary, any final comments?
No, I had a few notes written, but I think we've delayed everybody so much that I think we'll save it for the next one. I just, you guys have covered so much. You detailed it right down to the nitty-gritty.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Shahram. Thank you, Leo. We'll say good night.
Thank
We would
you
like
all.
you to watch for the recording of this thing and get it out there. Thank you. Good
God
night.
bless you
Good
guys.
night, everybody.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.